And that's my personal motto, always be kind. But that's also a philosophy I follow day to day. That's also a principle whenever I lead whatever kind of teams. Now, kindness is not just being friendly. That's a very superficial level of kindness. Kindness is actually being mindful.
Welcome to Tech Teams Today. Today we're joined by Jieke Pan, CTO at Synpulse. With over 20 years of experience leading digital product innovation and transformation initiatives across industries like banking, insurance, healthcare, retail, and telco. Jieke, welcome to the show. Insurance, healthcare, retail,
Thanks
and
a lot,
telco.
Matt.
Jieke, welcome to the show. So you describe yourself as a hands-on CTO. What does that mean to you in practice, and how has that shaped your leadership style?
Really great question. Hands-on means in this case, as a CTO leading the engineering team, I'm also participate in the software engineering development lifecycle. I'm very hands-on software engineer. I still write code to be very precise on the definition of hands-on. So I participate almost in the whole software development lifecycle from design phase, so working together with the designers, really craft the business requirements and translating into solution architecture. So working together with architects and taking that into technical decisions and technical plans and also technical architecture so that the development team can carry on and really start implementation. And I also participate development cycle when the real implementation phase started, whenever I could. Of course, in the role of CTO, as you can imagine, I take a lot more responsibilities that you have to balance among the priorities. Now, what's hands-on really also means, on the other hand, is you know really in a nutshell how your team is dealing with certain challenges and how you can work together with them, understand them in their background, right? Sometimes you often encounter situations there's a detachment between what the business people understands, what the requirements is, and what engineers and architects take it when the reality comes to truth, right? So there's a big gap between the expectations versus reality sometimes. So being hands-on actually is very helpful to close the gap.
Yeah, for sure. And also, like, especially nowadays more than ever, with tooling and the rapid clip of change in technology and also the tools that engineers are using. If you're not hands-on, if you don't know, like, sort of a day in the life of an engineer on your team, it's kind of hard to lead, right? Because
it's I don't know which sport you usually play or you watch in terms of, but it happens a lot. For instance, in basket, I think it's still happening time to time. The teams that they have the coach who is also principal player. So the coach is sometimes in those like really heated moments, right? They take off the shirts and starts really getting into the field. Not as a team fully dependent on him to win the game, but you are part of the game. And that's the main difference, right? So, yeah.
I mean, I'd probably say football. And it's like, if you've never played, if you've never, if you never played football before, it's probably pretty difficult to be a football coach, right?
That's really, really the truth. And sport describes connects also, the reality, what we encounter in technology delivery. Yeah, definitely.
But I also think, going to the whole player coach analogy, I think like nowadays you can't just be a coach. You have to be a player coach, right? Like
absolutely.
Yeah. Because like there was a time where leadership was a huge part and middle management was a big part, and there were people who spent their entire day on meetings and memos and meetings and memos, and it's like, well, what do you actually do, right? Like,
it's the trust, right? So the confidence and the trust and the distance you establish with your engineers and architects and your team. Shorter the distance, better the trust is, the easier the communication. As a leader, you still need to have those strategic meetings. You still need to plan your, your yearly budget. You still need to go through those usual hurdles you have to as a running the business. On the other hand, you need to have the ability to translate your business plan into what your engineers really do day to day, right? Otherwise, there's a disconnect and they feel they are just part of the team that gets demands and needs to execute their job day to day. Then that's will lose the motivation over time.
And looking back in your engineering roles, so your journey from, being an IC at various engineering roles to CTO leadership, what are some like pivotal experiences that shape sort of your leadership philosophy today?
That's a very interesting question because I worked both in product and then also consulting industry. Regardless which industries, I think really define the plan from your heart. That's what really shape you as a good leader. Really addressing the reality, not as a creating a very high level plan that it will stay on the planning level and it will never get accomplished into reality. Pragmatism is what I've learned throughout the years. Is really trying to tackle the problems. And often you see the people who criticize that type of leadership being too tactical. I mean, before real strategic leader, you need to be a tactical leader first to solve the problems day to day. Really walk the talk. That's the lesson I learned over the past years. And over time, you will learn how to become strategic. And not as a other way around, starting like talking about dreams while you can't even walk, right? So, and that's the biggest lesson learned.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. A lot of people can talk the talk, but you have to, through action, can you prove that you can actually walk the walk, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's very easy to tell, so it's easy to sound like you can walk the walk. And it's also very easy to test whether someone can actually walk the walk at the same time. And being able to do both is essential. So you've led across a lot of industries. I sort of said in the intro, so finance, healthcare, retail, telco. What sort of leadership lessons carry over universally, regardless of what industry?
Coming from the technology standpoint, industries is always agnostic for engineers and architects and development teams in general. We basically are problem solvers, right? We come up with a solution to solve problems, and not as a certain specific industry would play differently when it comes to leadership style. Obviously, if you look from the nature of the business, industries like financial services sector and healthcare, they are often considered as mission critical domains, right? Because it's a touch people's life, touch people's financial life. So not as you have to be less careful when it comes to retail, but there are certain aspects of compliance risks which much more demanding on the healthcare and the financial services domain. So that requires the team to be really quality driven, and having that mindset is easy to say again, right? But you do need to establish the way of working that builds this quality driven engineering culture that people feel the importance. And that is, you cannot just apply by training the people. You have to apply into your day-to-day, into your SDLC software development life cycle, into your DevSecOps practices. So really establish the quality from day one. if it is not there yet. Even if it is certain quality standards already established within a team, you need to challenge yourself with your teammates how you can do it even better in a more automated way. So from team leadership perspective, the ultimate goal is to get the team in a self-policing mode, right? So they really look after each other from the aspects of the quality, of the compliance, of the stability of the software they deliver to the industry, and that's the ideal situation, and you would know. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely, there is definitely a difference when there's compliance and regulatory issues in a startup or a software company versus versus basically a startup that doesn't really have to deal with those kinds of issues, right? You have a lot more leeway, you can ship faster, you know, you have a little more wiggle room creativity wise. Whereas if you're in a really highly regulated industry, you do have those compliance sort of roadblocks that you have to go through. Your team sort of has to adapt to that, right? It's a different
Absolutely.
pace.
Absolutely. But that pace also gives you the challenge of how to deliver smaller scope so that you don't end up in a very lengthy delivery process while your customers or your company don't see the results immediately, right? In the end, nowadays, we want to deliver fast and we want to validate fast. So that's a aspect that should not be the obstacle being seen as the risks and the compliance and the security aspect. Yeah,
Yeah, you can't let it slow you down too much, but it is an extra hoop to go through. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
so this next question, I'm really excited to hear you elaborate on this one. So, you posted about always be kind as an engineering culture
Interesting. You
principle.
noticed that.
Yes, I do a lot of research. And for me personally, this one really resonates because, you know, that that isn't spoken about often. In a lot of startups, it's actually kind of the opposite in some cases, where you're kind of like put through trials and tribulations to prove yourself and kind of almost like a hazing process. At least I went through it, and I've seen a lot of other people go through it where it's like we're not going to be nice to you until you've proven yourself and passed all these tests and shipped, you know, X, Y, and Z. And, you know, that's how I started off as an IC. And, but, and a lot of people that I came up with as an IC. But I think that you can do both, right? You can be kind and also put people through those
Absolutely.
trials and tests. So I'm curious, like, if you could elaborate on that principle and why kindness matters to you in high performance teams.
Um, I had I've been fortunate that I had a chance to lead being able to shape up actually in a more correct way, to shape up team into a very high performing team over the past few years. And that's my personal motto as always be kind. But that's also a philosophy I follow day to day. That's also a principle whenever I lead whatever kind of teams. Uh, that's the principle I always follow as well. Now, definition of kindness is not just being friendly. That's what people in the first instance take it as immediate interpretation. That's a very superficial level of kindness. Kindness is actually being mindful. So, in the software industry, we had enough technical depths. We have enough dead codes and the legacy code that we need to maintain for others. Um, Kindness is also being mindful of what you do, what you write in terms of level code. Uh, that reflects into the engineering practices of really applying clean code principles, even, right? Being mindful that whoever is going to maintain your code in future, being able to understand what you have written 10 years, 20 years back, right? And that's the beauty of it. The kindness is also being really on the team level, obviously, among the team members looking after each other. Being mindful cultural differences, being mindful of the seniority level. The scenario you just described, it's recognizable, right? In the venture capitalist and startup more domains, often there's a level of pressure to deliver more. Um, sometimes slow down, then really reflect, and then starts moving again is better than keeps moving, right? And without reflection. So kindness is also retrospective, looking what you can improve as a team, as a people. One of the practice I did with my teams is also learned from other leaders. Actually, I inspired and adopted to my team. It's very often updates, frequent updates on the team level, company level, etc., unit level, and the company level. But on the other hand, very often retrospectives. It's not a retrospective as an agile methodology defines. Retrospective as in a one-on-one mode, giving feedbacks to each other. And that's a very powerful message that you hand it in hands, very carefully crafted, written manually on paper. That would organize what we call the speak back sessions, that every single team members within the project team, they had a chance to really express the appreciation to each individual team members they work with, including project managers, including even sometimes customer side team members as well. And on the other hand, also presenting improvements areas that they feel their peers, and while working with them, they feel they should improve. Now, those messages are actually written in a very carefully the kind of way, but also clear, transparent way. So people got to the point, but don't get offended or took it as criticism rather than as a suggestion or feedback for improvements. And we did it very widely and adopted really large team at scale. Result is really very quickly you create team bonding. As I was still leading a lot of consistent multicultural teams, right? People coming from different countries, different religion, different backgrounds. It's important to understand each other. But more importantly, also, another aspect is we need to address the fact. And sometimes the human being has this nature of trying to, not trying to be direct because you would offend someone or would hurt someone's feeling. But whenever you are working on a project, right, address things objectively. And that's I see often lacking from software development teams, to be honest with you. That gets into a kind of in a loop or into a cycle that you will never get out of it, and it starts building personal feelings for unnecessary reason. So kindness is a combination of multiple levels.
Yeah, I think also fear plays a part in it. Is
definitely true.
Yeah, you're like, whether you're on an executive team or whether you're an engineer on a larger engineering team, you're afraid that if you speak up, there might be repercussions or someone might take it out against you in some way in the future, or you might be one-upping somebody. Let's say like you're in a meeting and there's the leader, right? And they're saying, all right, this is how we're going to solve this problem. And in your head, you're like, I have a better idea, but I'm not going to bring it up because I don't want to outshine my master, right?
Exactly. Or just because I am, let's say, junior level, should I speak up? Will this affect my job security? And that happens a lot, and unfortunately, right? And that builds up a certain feeling of hierarchy and stuff. I mean, you do need to have a leader, who takes the team towards a direction, but you don't necessarily have a multi-level managers in that sense, right? That's the huge difference of who is participating and who is standing aside, just giving commands.
Yeah, I think it definitely needs to be a two-way conversation,
Certainly.
and the better leaders make it clear, like, hey, this is what I think we should do to solve the problem or to build a solution or whatever. Does anyone have any ideas that are contrary to what I think, or maybe ways that you can improve what I think, and giving your team that like psychological safety to know like you can bring something to the table and it's no one's going to take offense and no one's going to take it personally. You might have a better idea than my idea. You might have a better solution than my solution. You should be surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you as a leader.
Absolutely. And especially in the software domain, that's a syndrome we're always trying to avoid. Is not invented here syndrome, right? Things are evolving so fast. If you're all trying to be the think yourself as the superhero, you can solve everything and anything, and try to build everything and reinventing the wheel, you are actually losing towards your competition. Another thing is never underestimate the people who are fresh graduates or who just joined the industry recently. They are the ones that actually pick up the most recent, most efficient tool at their hands. They learn the most advanced programming language than you do most of the time. So never underestimate that, right? Of course, your experience as a senior, you will bring because you've been there and done that. It does not mean the juniors are inferior than you. So listen bi-directionally is very important. Very, very important.
And they also don't bring the baggage, right? Like they don't
of
bring
course
the
not. Yeah, that's the best part.
Right.
Yeah.
So shifting gears a little bit, extreme programming principles have been a big part of your experience, and I'm curious what extreme programming practices you still think are essential today, particularly now with the Gen AI LLM boom.
Oh yeah, extreme programming consists a lot of really good practices, and me and my teams personally, really in real life scenarios, we've been benefiting from it. Not only just delivering the higher end of engineering quality solutions, but also when it comes to the previous topic about always be kind, creating the team bonding. It's really consists of the concept of delivering small, validate continuously, and then improve continuously the solution you build and deliver to your customers. So it combines the business value with the technology delivery. So allow you to adjust your technology choices as you go, adjust your business plan as you go, really truly embody the core principle and value of what Agile wants to deliver to the market. Now, it gets certainly diluted a little bit because of the faster moving pace of solution delivery over the past few years, and different companies adopt the different Agile methodologies. But the extreme programming does not stand as the opposition towards, for instance, Scrum or Kanban. They can be perfectly combined. It's just the way how you can ship your software continuously. That's the core principle. Now, if you translate that principle into methodologies and approaches we're working, one of the typical ones is test-driven development. So write tests before code. Nowadays, with even generative AI, it's even more important. You set the guardrails that how your software should behave, because guess what? AI even can generate code for you, right? The more complex task takes you days to write or weeks even to finalize. Well, it could get accomplished in a few hours. Now, how do you know it's working? How do you know it is working 100% according to your spec and the requirements? The only way to prove it is test. So applying test-driven development is essential. Not as you suddenly become a QA engineer or automation tester. No, you apply the test-driven development to AI. I don't know what your team uses. We use a lot Cursor. It's one of the IDEs these days, body, and also embedded LLM models into it. And to be honest, a lot of people are using it wrongly.
Yep.
It's not because of problem of Cursor or Kiro or any plugins on any IDEs. People think vibe coding is the thing. And me personally, I'm a little bit allergic to that terminology. It's great. You can generate a code. How do you know it's working?
Yeah, I'm so glad you
that's
brought
the
that up.
first. That's the first principle, quality-driven principle. So test before code, and I can even share in offline if people are interested. You can instruct your LLM to follow that principle, right? You need and you should, it's your role as an engineer, as tech lead, whoever is involved in the development life cycle, you should ensure your LLM is followed. If not, you need to steer. That's why human intervention stands in the end to accept the code generated by LLM, right? That's the first thing. Second thing is pair programming. So that creates really short distance between engineers to exchange your ideas, exchange your opinions, and align and establish consents while they're writing code, right? It's often established through a ping-pong process. So someone writes code, someone writes a test, then exchange, right? So they share one keyboard, they share one laptop and one screen. They look at the problem exactly together at the same time. Now think about it. You have a virtual assistant. You have the LLM, you have the AI sits exactly in the virtual space on your IDE. Treat it as your pair programmer. Never treat it as your assistant so that you can delegate and sit back. You are actually the peer of your AI. You share exactly the same space while AI is generating the code. You have the responsibility to review the code. While you are writing the code, AI has a responsibility to validate it. So that goes back and forth. So pair programming is a perfect methodology fits nowadays if you apply generative AI. And then continuous delivery. So once a pair writes the code, you're still following the 5 principles. You want another pair to just give a thought about it or review the code. And that also comes with, applying the clean code principles in your pull request review or your code review processes. That AI plays a tremendous amount of effort gain and productivity improvements of really looking at your pull requests and creating summaries and synthesizing the information to really speed up your review processes. But you need to give the guardrails and rules of engagement so LLM knows what your code quality standard is, and not to start really looking to randomly to your code base. So all these practices doesn't lose the value, actually speed up. Actually, with the AI, generative AI assisted way of working, I would call such way instead of live coding. Actually, naturally, you can embody these days now, embedded embrace the extreme programming and the agile principles and embed it into day-to-day work. Yeah, in a automated fashion.
Yeah, it's funny you brought up pair programming because a couple episodes ago, I actually had my first boss as an engineer on the show, and he was the guy sitting next to me when it was in office, two people sitting next to each other, pair programming together, and we were kind of joking, sort of in a joke only we would know together, is like, he's like, yeah, well, now AI is sort of like your pair programmer, and I'm like, yeah, one that's much smarter than probably the person you used to sit next to in the office, right? But then you also touched on vibe coding, which I honestly am doing my best to try to understand the value of, because, like, for me, first of all, huge Cursor fan, but I treat Cursor like I would treat an engineer. I don't just tell it do this or do that. No, it's do this, and this under these guardrails, which are very specific, and these, and don't do this, and this. And here's my acceptance criteria. And if I don't, and usually it's pretty good at following all of that and understanding the context. And
Right.
obviously
Right.
it's getting better and better. And I don't understand why you wouldn't do that. Why wouldn't you be so specific in your prompts, right?
Absolutely. And also, it's not a prompt engineering. You can set it once, right? So with my team, we have separate Git repository with all the course rules applies for different program languages and frameworks for a specific reason, because we can continue enhancing the rules. Cross or any idea, otherwise we run into risk. Sound like this episode is about promoting Cursor. But using as an example, any agentic or generative AI agentic enabled assisted programming IDEs, it has embedded the rules already, and you can set it up once. It's not, and you can set it in range. It is applicable for your project or applicable for your whole IDE whenever you open it. And guess what? That becomes a part of your system prompt. Whenever every single interaction you have with your agent, that rules is applied underneath. So it's not a hassle. It's just you do it once, next time just import it, right?
Yeah, and just to not sound like we're only promoting Cursor, I hear a lot of good things about Cloud Code and Windsurf, and more recently
There are
Codex.
many tools,
Yeah.
right? The tools remains tools. Principles is the key. Yeah,
VS Code, Copilot.
whatever.
Just naming all of the ones I'm aware of.
Kiro, I don't know if you
Yeah.
tried, right?
Oh, that's Amazon, right?
Yeah. So it's also very powerful. So, but the tools that people use and adopt continuously are the ones because they added value for productivity, for quality, etc. So yeah, definitely. You need to set the guardrails. That's the most important aspect of defining the quality response from LLM.
Yeah, and I've read a lot of people on LinkedIn say, or different social media platforms, just say, like, on the flip side, right, of this discussion is, well, I vibe coded or whatever, built this product or something, I hacked something together, and it took me X amount of hours, and Cursor or Windsurf or something broke everything, and everything crashed. And it's like, well, why do you think that happened? Were you using Git? Were you using version control of any kind? Did you have guardrails? Did you have acceptance criteria? Were you testing in between every stage, every commit, testing front end, back end? No, you weren't. And that's sort of, I feel like the people who are saying things like that are the people who are just vibe coding, that don't actually understand the code that's being generated.
And also, without getting into kind of a discussion about whether these people understood or not, I think one nature we need to always keep in mind, the LLM is probabilistic approach. You give exactly the same prompt, different time frame, it will generate different type of code. It might result in the same outcome you're wishing for. It's probabilistically different, right? Just like a human being how the human being functions, the brain functions. If you ask someone to write the code in the morning, giving exactly the same task in the afternoon, they may even function differently, right? So that's how neural networks works. Now, but on the other hand, you cannot just say, hey, but LLM has broken my code. Nothing is broken if you have test coverage, as what you said.
That's also not your code, right? It's like,
so
LLM wrote the code. No,
and that's all about how well defined the boundaries and also the context that you pull in all those source code and for what purpose you are doing, right? it's refactoring, or it is what? Enhancement. So the scope is very important as well, right? And again, human in the loop. That's very important. And people felt like, oh, so now, it's a cooking and I'll be back in 2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
Michelin star chef wouldn't say that, right?
Yeah. All right. No, definitely not how it works. Yeah. More to come. I feel like I'm behind in terms of the whole vibe coding movement, but trying to learn as much as I can to see what the future of it will look like and why it is so popular. But I've also seen vibe coding cleanup specialist becoming more of a thing,
Okay.
which is pretty interesting. Yeah, right.
Cleanup specialist.
Meaning, yeah, somebody comes in and looks at this massive code base and sort of uses AI to clean up all the extra code that was written that's redundant and unnecessary, because obviously you want your software to run better, faster, be more scalable. You want less code, right? And I think with vibe coding, you can end up with these like enormous code bases when you really don't need them.
Yeah, so my personal experience also with my team is you need to go through multiple iterations with the same code base. You may even use different LLM models to do review, to do refactoring and improvements. You need to have your uh, domain knowledge engineers, right? Who knows exactly what he and she's doing or she's doing, in the sense of, hey, but I'm accepting this piece of the code changes or adding additions, that it makes sense or not. And continuously increasing the test coverage so you can always refactor, but never do like 100% uh, generative AI assisted coding, right? It's assistant, so you still need to write code, but use generative AI to places where you, for instance, you want to refactor a little bit a piece of code. You want to kind of really generating more test coverage so that it covers and protects, but you still need to review those test cases, right? So that you can start refactoring. Or the most useful ones is you want to spike certain new features, which you don't know yet what's the best direction to do. It's synchronous, asynchronous patterns, architecture patterns you apply, or API strategies, and etc. So then, you apply LLM to bring multiple options that you can choose. But those options, again, it's meant to be thrown away. Now, like option 3 or B, A or B, but you choose one. That's the direction you will stick to. That's the pattern. So now from there onwards, throw away the code, start writing tests first, right? You can use generative AI to generate some part of the code, but you are guiding that towards that direction. And never be afraid to delete the code. I always say. Then people kind of start commenting to-dos and slash comments all over the place. And then you have that code never gets triggered, and nobody knows whether it needs to be deleted or not. Delete all the goddamn code which are commented out, right? So if they are in the comments area, so why would you leave them there? It's like, what? Eventually, magically, this will trigger? Or
yeah. Oh, that's literally impossible. But yeah,
but that's, again, back to the clean code principle. It has nothing to do with AI, right? People often mix that with AI and, now look, so how much garbage code has been generated. Really, have you checked your source code? Have you run your SonarQube and the security validations prior to generative AI? How many dead codes have been there? Suddenly this becomes a issue because generative AI is causing the amount of dead code. Not necessarily. If you don't have the proper CI/CD pipeline, if you don't have proper SDLC, you will always have more garbage code than what you expect to be.
Yeah, it's always been an issue, but yeah, I have seen quite a few people saying, like, I think I heard one engineering leader say, AI generated code is like a ticking time bomb. I'm like, that's I don't
It's
agree with
really
that.
relative. It's
Yeah.
really relative, and sometimes also it's a probing question, so to speak, to trigger a community discussion around that
Right.
subject rather
Right.
than the person really happened to him or her.
Yeah.
But it's an inevitable trend, to be honest with you.
Well, I think you're
Sooner
right
or
about
later.
it being relative, right? Like it's a ticking time bomb if you vibe coded 100% of your code and you have no idea what it does. Yeah, it's a ticking time bomb for sure.
Yeah,
But if you follow the best practices of software development, it's probably not a ticking time bomb if you're
yeah,
using
exactly.
correctly, right?
Correct. Right.
On this subject, do you think the next generation, so there's sort of like this, I guess the last closest thing to this would be mobile, when people, mobile became big and kids that were graduating with CS degrees were like, all right, I'm going to become a mobile engineer. And that's the way the future and sort of full stack or back end or front end is sort of will be irrelevant. Everything will be mobile. Now it's sort of everyone, coming up as engineers, the younger generation, they're coming up with these tools available to them. So they didn't have to go through the experience of, for example, I started coding in the late 2000s. I taught myself how to code. I was in the university library. I was not a computer science student. I was looking at textbooks, going through textbooks, tutorials, many, many, many hours of doing so. A lot of failing, a lot of hours spent looking for semicolons that were missing. And there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into that database design, SQL structure, database structure, things that you can kind of, I wouldn't say skip, but you can learn a lot faster and a lot more efficiently today, if you're just getting into engineering now. So there's almost like a division between two different types of engineers. The type of engineer that
Absolutely.
came up in that time period I'm referring to, sort of like this now, I guess, like the
Me
Stone
too, by
Age.
the way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And these engineers now that literally started coding with Windsurf and Copilot and Cursor and things like that.
absolutely. Yeah.
How do you think that will affect the future of software development and also like the future or present of hiring software developers?
That's a very good question. We are going through a phase that technology is so advanced. People get exposure into the tools so quickly and to the information even, back then to your example, you go to libraries and to start learning the whole book about a programming language or design paradigms and stuff like that. These days, you can very easily even query to a chatbot and get immediate information, right? So even no longer the search on the Google is the thing, right? Back then, Google is a luxury. So technology has evolved to speed up our learning curve, not necessarily giving us enough time to create this foundational knowledge. So you will see a gap of it's already and will still continue happening. Is a gap of what I call the mid-layer engineers that grew from junior to senior in a more classical fashion of they got graduated from the school, but they learned exactly the software engineering paradigms rather than specific program languages and get into society, learn first the job as a software engineer, and then grow their career ladder and build up the seniority towards a senior. Now, that middle layer will start to become very thin. And you will start having a very strong foundational group of people who have gone through that in early 2000. I would not call it 90s, 2000s. That's still the people who get a chance to even first hands, like myself and my colleagues and friends, get hands-on experience with assembly program language, is close to the machine language. But nowadays, people get very high-level languages, right? Object-oriented language is even outdated. So then that middle layer will become very thin. And that is a reality we need to face, is within this group of senior people, not age, but experience, we gotta be the ones who are responsible building the foundational layer strongly, establish the strong foundation. That's also my message out there to everyone who are being in the industry for the last 20 years or 15 years in software engineer. Really, it's our duty to now really consolidate the baseline, because everything you do now serves as a knowledge base for LLM to digest. Now, if you take the trend as just like the fashion trend, or to get into this flow of vibe coding without responsibility, again, I'm not as a throwing here a flag, I'm against the vibe coding. I'm asking for a responsible software engineering result. Either it's through vibe coding or not, really, I would care less. But you do need to have a proper engineering process to guardrail this. And again, back to the topic, I think it's our mission, it's our responsibility and accountability for all the senior people who has gone through the more classical way of software engineering life cycle. Now is our responsibility to keep this foundational layer solid. Otherwise, you will create this gap layer, and then you will see it, and the career progression will be much, much faster for the junior engineers or the fresh graduates. I don't call them junior anymore because they are super top talents, right? These people are very smart people, are super qualified. They just need a little bit, couple years of professional experiences. But when it comes to software engineering, they get all the tools at hand. They are at the best season, right? Even code can generate it. You can imagine that? So now it's up to us to really set the guardrails and guide these people through the core engineering principle. So it's more than important than ever now is to look after the software engineering principles and the culture. And you have to build that in every team and every company. If you want to have sustainable growth and in terms of quality and also, the overall engineering engagement for your business, you got to look after engineering culture. And that's very, very important.
Yeah, and I'm curious, like, how you think this will change org structure. So, like, how should engineering leaders prepare for, I wouldn't even say the future, the present and the future of AI augmented development without losing sight of, the foundations?
Yeah. Put it very bluntly, it's no longer the headcount game. It's happening within the market, so you can read the news. I'm not going to get into those top line news anymore. It is happening not only within the high tech industries, but it's happening in general. As it's no longer the headcount growth as for your business growth. So that's also a shifting for organization, for your budgeting process, and the overall how you run your business, no matter it is a consulting, it's a service or product company. It's really the game of efficiency, the game of quality combined with efficiency. Smaller teams, but really solid, engineering culture driven, empowered, and quality driven, and quality first engineering principle applied engineering teams. Then with certain level automation. So the organization is no longer that. If you look from typical team composition to deliver a software, you would have solution architects or software architects, you will have a tech lead, you will have engineers, you will have designers, POs, MBAs, and QAs, and DevOps. And some of the roles will be combined as a full stack engineering role because it's required that change. It's no longer the division of, oh, well, I'm waiting for the backend to give me the API spec, right? I'm being a little bit sarcastic now. But these days, you can, even without AI, we all know applying AI API first approach, you can even compile your front-end components by having the API spec, right? So you can get your backend service skeleton by having the service spec, API spec as well. So nothing blocks you to become really an end-to-end responsible software delivery. Therefore, you also need to step into the domains which you may or may not be the subject matter expert by default, such as front-end engineers getting knowledge of the backend and vice versa. It's a paradigm. It's not a paradigm shift. It's a expansion, what I call the responsibilities to the engineers. Naturally, it will reduce the team size. Naturally, it will require people be much more responsible and accountable for what they do. And it's a good thing. And back to the topic we talk about extreme programming, it's a optimized team setup, right? So you no longer have the dedicated Scrum Master role. That's very classic for way of thinking, right? You won't have dedicated tech lead role. It is everyone is responsible for everything. So that's you will see the paradigm shift. Now,
So it's a paradigm shift from the specialist to the generalist, right?
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And the generalist, it's not a necessarily bad thing. You are
No.
actually expert on multiple domains, not as a you don't know anything and being the generalist, right?
But it's new. It's very new because I remember like roughly 10 years ago, I was, I still am a front end developer, back end developer, solutions architect, product manager, also had a business background. Like I said, I'm not a computer science student. I had a business and finance degree. And so I start getting recruited by all these big tech companies, and I get in these interviews, and the number one question that kept coming up, because they wanted specialists, they wanted sharpshooters, right? They wanted, you're the best front end, Node.js developer, you're the best back end Laravel PHP developer, or you're the best solutions architect, or what have you. And I remember always getting the question of like, so what are you? Are you a back end developer? Are you a front end developer? Are you a mobile developer? Are you a product manager? Are you a product marketer? And I was like, well, what's the downside to being all of them? I think it makes you a better front end developer if you understand the back end. You're better at both if you're a solutions architect. You're better at all of the above if you've also been a product manager before. And then if you're good at, all those technical skills, you'll be a better product manager, right? But back then to 2010, 11, 12, that was a red flag in the interview process of like, we don't know what to do with you. We don't know what to put you. We don't know where to put you. And now, in my conversations with engineering leaders, it is the total opposite. They are looking for generalists and not so much specialists nowadays.
And such a specialization, think about it, it is not because you are the mathematicians or theoretical physicists, right? Then definitely you need to be the specialized in your domain. Especially in software engineering, I think the paradigms, the software engineering principles, the way working needs to be well understood and applied and embodied by every single person, regardless which stack you work on. Now, funny enough, the programming languages, they are all relatively young, right? 10 years old, 7 years old, 5 years old. So tell me, right? There's no specialist 5 years ago. It was invented by engineers. So you cannot just call the specialist. That's ridiculous, right? Now, and also, do you need to have specialization in certain domains? Maybe, because in your team, maybe you need 1 or 2 guys knows exactly how mobile works end to end. Yeah. In the nutshell, right? How to interact with, for instance, healthcare domain, you need to know how to build firmware to connect Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivities. In financial services domain, how can I connect it with Apple Wallet and Google Wallet, Apple Pay? Yes, you do need to have those guys, but those are domain specialists. They've done that and been there, and it's a skill can be learned. It's not a domain that requires years of research. Right? People, again, Apple came up with Apple Pay. Google came up with the Google Pay. Those are protocols, right? So, and we need to understand that those are skills can be learned. So, it's always good to have some of the guys as a subject matter experts. And even for those people, they need to be super versatile these days. Yeah.
Yeah, I was speaking to a co-founder of a cloud cost optimization company called North.cloud. Yassine, this is a shout out for you. And, we're both former, I guess you're once a solutions architect, always a solutions architect. And I was asking him, like, nowadays, I became a solutions architect in like 2017. Like, feels like forever ago, and I think it is in terms of technology. What will DevOps be a dedicated role in the future? And sort of that our conversation was around, yes, if you're a hyperscale Netflix, you're deploying to millions of people, yes, you will probably need to keep that separated and need a DevOps team. But if you're a startup, you need your engineers to not only know how to code, but also how to deploy that code to production in the cloud, in multiple cloud environments. That is sort of, at least in our opinion, in that conversation, the new definition of a full stack developer, right?
Yeah, certainly. And it comes with, it's not an old discussion. I think a lot of companies, even in my past experiences, we had this discussion debate, right? Whether it's DevOps, it's a competency, or it's a culture. Without getting too much into philosophical discussions, but just like DevOps and full stack, it is all about which areas of responsibility you want to step into, right? Taking DevOps, for instance, engineers should know how to deploy your application runtime. That's up to you to really manage, right? Now, when it comes to the infrastructure, sure, you do need to have an infrastructure specialist who knows exactly how to set up cloud landing zone, how to manage monitoring, auditing, and all the aspects when it comes to the access control and privacy, data encryption, and security. But on top of that, your application runs, right? Your application, how to automate your deployments, how to make sure that they horizontally scale. It's really up to engineers to make sure that they have that skill and also take that responsibility to deploy, and not as delegating. Oh, I have in my infra team, I have my DevOps team, so now it's up to them to do so. No, there's no clean cut at all. Of course, there's access control and the role and the responsibilities, and also, for reason of security reasons. But beyond that, you should be able to contribute wherever you are, right? No matter which role you are.
I'm sure some people might disagree with that, but I just think
that's why I say, without getting too philosophical.
Right, exactly. But I think they disagree now, but I think it's the direction that things are going to move, right? Is you might have just had this one job and you got really great at it in the last 5 or 10, probably 10 years. And now you're going to have to learn new things. And I think you need to have that attitude if you want to build some career moat and really have a future in engineering. If you're set in your ways, not even too set in your ways, if you're set in your ways, period, I think this is going to become a very challenging time for you as a developer.
No.
So I'm curious how all of this ties into your philosophy on hiring, like especially this new generation of developers. When you're interviewing developers or you have team members that are interviewing developers, what are some of the signals you're looking for, especially hiring on the junior side where they more than likely started coding with AI co-pilots?
Yeah. Of course, the skill set is important. We would like to also learn how much the person has getting themselves really into the coding experience, what they've done on delivered that's close enough to production readiness solutions. Some people, right, in the university already chose to publish apps or deploy solutions and services or contributing to open source communities. And those are the aspects we can easily see and tell and evaluate. That's one of the aspects, and immediately shows a difference, right? And some people even start working or having some internship while still in the second or third year of the university, depends on the choice and options they have. While others are doing research work in the university labs, etc. All these aspects are very key information we would like to have. And also the learning curve. And often we give any candidates, regardless of the seniority level, a code assignment. It may sound a very classical procedure, but the code assignment itself is very simple. So it's easy to solve. Nowadays, you can even use AI. Now the point comes on the aspects we are looking to: the test coverage, the completeness of solving the problem, and the cleanness how you maintain your code. So we have automated process to evaluate, but we also have a people kind of look on top of the code, saying, look, it is mid-level, it is acceptable level or not. Then, and that part of the assignment as a result will serve as input for the next round of interview if the person qualifies. And more importantly, whenever we provide code assignments, it's a blind code assignment. We don't know who did it. And we also don't want to know, right, to not create bias. But once this carried on to the next level interview process as a technical interview, we actually want to see how much the person in reality actually contributed to the solution. We know you will inevitably have a percentage of vibe coding or generative AI assisted way of working. In reality, when it comes to production delivery, we still wanted to know how much that you cope with this new way of working, right? Especially how you pay attention to the quality aspects. And then the third aspect, very importantly, is communication skill. We would like to get people who are honest with their opinion. They are open, straightforward communication, and more importantly, can take criticism and can work with the team. So typically we put them in a scenario and then giving some of the challenges, situations which are close to reality, and to test it out the cultural value aspects of the person, the communication style, etc. And of course, if you don't have too much of the professional experience, you may come across sometimes too much communicative or not, or less communicative. And none of these aspects are meant to be negative, right? It's your profile, it's your experience. What we're looking to is how truly you are, and which aspects can be improved. And then all these soft and hard skill aspects that combined, then we'll make a final judgment. That's a typical we evaluate the candidates. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a pretty holistic approach to it, and I think that's
yeah.
the
But
way
we
to go.
still, even with all this advancement of AI, etc., we don't change the process because in the end you are hiring human being.
Right.
Yeah. So that doesn't change the course of hiring process, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, I would say you're almost hiring a cyborg because you're hiring a human who is going to be using
That's a true. That's a true.
AI,
You
right?
know, but again, and once you address all these aspects, you know, it's easy to identify those gems as well very quickly.
Yeah. Like, how good are they with using AI code editors, right?
How they
Like,
communicate, how they
yeah.
tackle certain scenarios and challenges, it becomes very obvious and very, very
And you manage a distributed team
across the
globally.
globe. Mhm.
Yeah. So, what are some best practices that you've found to be successful in managing teams, maybe with time zone overlap, maybe without time zone overlap?
Yeah. So first, it's strong local leaders who share the exact same cultural value. That's very important. In the end, you have local team, people have the local interactions. Having someone they can look up as a leader locally is very important. And without a local leader, distributed team, you need to spend a lot of effort also on a remote way. Depends how remote they are, how they are distributed. It can become a challenge time zone wise and energy wise as the top leader. Second thing is close and also open and transparent communications. Open communication, frequent communications are required, not only to the leaders but also to the team members. Um, Thirdly, so some of the cultural aspects might appear to be locally be more hierarchical um, compared to other regions or countries. It's just a local culture differences. There's not good or bad on that. You need to have a proper understanding of your local culture of your local team, not causing misunderstanding on that cultural aspect. Right. On the other hand, as a global leader, you should act truly who you are, because you are the one who actually remove all those hurdles which are local culture specific, right? And not necessarily if because one of the teams is culturally speaking more hierarchically driven type of structured people, that you have to also establish a very strong hierarchy, but then you wouldn't get anything out of it. So keep it really lightweighted in terms of management style and much more taking the lead, addressing the topics that really serve your roadmap and share your vision frequently and often. But more importantly, you accomplish step by step of your vision, not as that's a light in the end of tunnel, but people never see it. It's getting closer, right? So you need to have that mechanism to pave the way. You need to give a frequent update about your recent releases, accomplishments, customer project delivery, success stories, even failures, right? And last not least, get them involved. Organize remote meetups, local meetups, tech talks, or any other form which is allow them to share knowledge and encourage them to speak and present. And that's very powerful.
Yeah.
And
I definitely agree with that, and I think that will become more and more important, as technology continues to pick up the pace. So, a few sort of rapid fire questions to close the episode out.
sure.
What's sort of if you could sum up one sort of tactic that you use to mentor rising leaders in your team, what would it be?
And interesting. It's always a topic that I always encourage people to do is whenever they are in their leadership position, define the plan of the next leader who will be able to take their job.
That's a good one. And if you could give one piece of advice to engineers aspiring to leadership, what would it be?
Engineers to aspire to leadership, can you be more specific on that in the sense of
An IC that wants to be an engineering leader one day.
Okay. In that sense, my advice is really, regardless of your culture differences or local culture or any other structural constraints or organizational setup, be brave of what you want to accomplish in your career. And that's very crucial. If you believe that leadership brings you the enthusiasm and motivation, and also have a clear understanding, it's just not a job rank or title, because it requires not just sweat and tears, but really the drive to be a leader. Rather than, and it is beyond a task or responsibility, you are actually accountable for people. And if you think that you can step into such type of roles and responsibilities, the best way is really starting now, right? Experimenting it without anyone giving you the title or job or position.
Yeah. It's
helping your peers. That's the best way to start.
Yeah, it's like people, it's like there's an old saying that people respect titles, titles don't respect people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so because the leadership title will naturally come when you are seen as a leader.
What's and this is the last question. What is one, this is my favorite question, by the way. What's one contrarian belief you hold about engineering leadership that others might disagree with?
Oh, good one. I think actually my personal motto, the always be kind. So people may all agree, but they all may disagree because I also hear the comments that people think you may create a environment which prevents you from discovering the real problems and troubles, because everyone tend to be very friendly to each other, right? So, but again, back to that, as I mentioned earlier, always be kind. It's not just being friendly; it's being mindful. Right? Sometimes it's actually not being friendly, but being really straightforward for the root cause of the problem. But you are mindful what you do and what you do. So yes, that can often get misunderstood by a lot of people.
Yeah, well, I like that one, and I'll definitely. I mean, I'd like to think I've always been kind, but I think it's something.
No, there you go. Your first impression would be, "Hey, but am I friendly to the people?" Right? So, right. But that's a baseline, right?
And mindful. I think mindful is the one that's different. Right. Is as I'm giving this person critique, how could that potentially make them feel? And a lot of people don't think about that. You know, they just think, oh, well, this is all the criticism I have, all the critique I have for them.
Absolutely.
And they don't think, well, how is this person going to go home or turn off their computer if they're working remotely? How are they going to feel the rest of the day after I give them all of this feedback? Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should deliver it to them a different way, or maybe I should spread it out, right? Correct. So don't give them a big, here's a pile of critique about you. Have a nice day. Have a nice weekend. That's probably, or starting the week that way is probably not a good idea.
Yeah, maybe exactly.
Break it into pieces over time. But Jieke, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
This was a great conversation. I think it was a great episode. If you're in the audience, don't forget to like and subscribe to Tech Teams Today. We're on all major podcast platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it, we're there. And Jieke, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. My pleasure.